Jupiter is sitting on a throne of gold and precious stones, bearing in his hand a scepter of cypress. At his feet is the eagle, whose metallic plumage shimmers with various colors. Thunderbolts, his terrible arms, lie on the floor. At his right is his wife, the jealous Juno, with a refulgent diadem and a peacock of vanity. At his left is a wise Pallas, his daughter and adviser, adorned with her helmet and awesome shield, crowned with green olive and gracefully bearing her heavy spear. Forming a prominent contrast is Saturn, sitting on his heels and staring at the beautiful group. In graciousness reclines the lovely Venus in a bed of roses, crowned in fragrant myrtle, caressing Cupid. Divine Apollo, suavely strikes muse of comedy, Bohemia, muse of rhetoric, Erratum, muse of lyric poetry, Orerbe, muse of song and music, Uranium, muse of astronomy, and Cleo, muse of history. Completing the select circle are Bellona, Alcides, and Moons. Behind Jupiter and Juno are Hebe and Ganymede. On the right side of Jupiter sits Justice on the throne, her attributes in her hands. Enter the nine moons, third score, the muse of dance, followed by nymphs, naiads, and undines who, scattering flowers, dance the lyres of Apollo and Euryto on the flute of Euterpe. After the dance, they group themselves on either side of the stage. Enter Mercury.
I have obeyed your orders, sovereign father. Neptune and his court cannot come. They fear to lose commands of the seas because of the boldness of men. Vulcan is still at work on the thunderbolt you ordered him to make, with which to arm Olympus, and is finishing them now. As for Pluto,
Enough! I don't need them either. Have, gentlemen, serve the nectar so the immortals may drink.
He who wishes to live and to make diversions, let him abandon Minerva and tend my vine.
Don't you see that mighty Jupiter is about to speak?
So what? Is a conqueror of the Titans annoyed? The gods are drinking nectar so anyone can express merriment as he pleases. But I see that my disciple has offended you, and you use this as an excuse.
Defend him, Silunus, so they won't say that your followers have plenty of bad manners.
Minerva, about to speak, is silent by gesture of Jupiter, but expresses her disdain with a smile that alerts the delicate serenity of her shapely lips. Meanwhile, the gods finish their nectar and have begun to chat among themselves.
There's a time, great gods, when the proud of sons of earth attempted to climb Olympus by peeling mountain upon mountain, so they could wrest my power. And there is no doubt at all that they would have succeeded if your arms and my terrible thunderbolts had not hurled them down to Tartarus, burying the others in the bowels of fairy Etna. This happy event do I wish to celebrate with all the pomp of the immortals, now that Earth, following its eternal course, has returned to that very same point in its orbit that it occupied then. Thus, I, the king of the gods, desire to begin with feast, a literary contest. I have here magnificent war trumpet, a lyre and a crown of laurel, all exquisitely made, the trumpet of a metal known only to Vulcan, more precious than gold and silver. The lyre, like that of Apollo, is of gold and mother of pearl, fashioned also by Vulcan, but its strings, wrought by the Muses, have no equal, and the crown, woven by the graces of the finest laurel, growing in my immortal gardens, shines more brilliantly than all the crowns of the kings on earth. These three prizes are of equal value, and who has most ably cultivated the letters and the virtues shall be owner of these magnificent jewels. Show me, therefore, the mortal whom you deem worthy to receive them.
Allow me, Jupiter, to speak first, since I am your wife and the mother of the most powerful gods. No one better than me can present to you so perfect a mortal as the divine Homer. Who indeed would dare dispute his supremacy? For no work can compete with his Iliad so brave and bold, and with his Odyssey so reflective and prudent. Who, like him, has sung your grandeur and that of the other gods so magnificently, as if he had surprised us right here on Olympus and been present at our gatherings? Who has done more than him to keep the odorous incense of Arabia burning abundantly before our images as well as fat sacrificial offerings, whose delectable smoke rising in capricious spirals pleases enough to placate our anger, who, like him, has recounted the most sublime battles in more splendid verses. He sang of divinity, of knowledge, of virtue, of bravery, of heroism and disaster, using all the notes of his lyre. It is he who deserves the prize, for I believe, as all Olympus believes, that nobody else has made himself so worthy of our esteem.
Wife of great Jove, if I don't share estimable option, and you, Jupiter, visible only to mortals, be lenient to my pleas. I pray you not to allow that he who sung of my son Aeneas should be vanquished by Homer. Remember the lyre of Virgil, which sung over glories and made sweet even the laments of tragic love. His most sweet and melancholy verses stirred the soul. He praised pity in the person of the son of Anchises. His battles are no less glorious, those fought at the foot of the Trojan walls. Aeneas is greater and more virtuous than the irritable Achilles. In short, to mine, Virgil is far superior to the poet of Chios. Is it not true that he fulfills all the requirements laid down by your holy mind?
Having spoken, she returns to recline gracefully in her couch, like the gracious Undine, who, cuddling in the foam of the waves, forms the most precious jewel of lovely poetical lake.
What? And why is the Roman poet to be preferred to the Greek? How could Virgil, a mere imitator, be greater than Homer? Since when has the copy been better than the original? Ha! Beautiful Venus, I see you are mistaken, and I am not surprised. For when the subject is not love, it's over your head. Besides, the heart and the passions never knew how to reason. Abandon the argument, I beg you, in the name of your innumerable lovers.
In spite of your excellent memory, which ever recalls the golden apple so unjustly denied, your famous and never quite fully regarded charms. I see with disgust that you have forgotten the gross insults your favorite Homer hurled against us. However, if you yourself find him reasonable and truthful, that's fine, and I felicitate you for it. But, as for me, let the gods of Olympus say.
Yes, let them say that you praise Virgil because it is said he behaved with you and that Juno defends Homer because he is the poet of Virgil. And that both of you are really meditating curses and compliments. But you, Jupiter, why do you not enter in this debate? You sit like stand listening to the theologians of the Olympian feast.
Husband, why do you allow this deformed and ugly monster to insult us? Kick him out of Olympus, for his breath stinks. Besides,
Glory to Juno, who never insults, for she merely called me ugly and deformed.
shut up, god of mockery! By the Stygian lake. But enough of this, and let Minerva speak, whose opinion has always been mine since time immemorial.
Yes, another one like you, famous meddlers who are always found where they should not be.
I beg you to hear me, mighty son of Saturn, who shakes Olympus with your terrible throne, and you, wise and venerated gods, who direct and govern mankind. Please do not take my words wrong. If we're submitted to the will of Thunder Hurler, if by chance my arguments lack weight in your eyes, then refute them and weigh them in the scales of justice. There is an ancient Hesperia beyond the Pyrenees, a great man whose fame has crossed, with the swiftness of the lightning flash, the space that separates the world of mortals from Olympus. Ignored and unknown, he became the toy of envy and vile passions, overwhelmed by disaster, the sad fate of great spirits. It seemed indeed that the world has extracted from Tartarus all its sufferings and torments, and had heaped them on his unhappy person. But, in spite of so many sufferings and injustices, he has not cared to return blow for blow, but being too good and too great to be vengeful, he has rather sought to correct and educate his fellow men by creating an immortal work. He is Don Quixote. I speak then of Cervantes, of this son of Spain, who is to be her pride but is now perishing in the most dreadful misery. The Quixote is great labor, is a web that punishes and corrects, drawing not blood, but laughter. It is a nectar that contains the virtues of a better medicine. It is a cursing hand that energetically disciplines human passions. If you ask me what obstacles he overcame, please listen to me for a moment and you shall know. The world found itself invaded by a kind of madness, dismal and frenzied, spread by the idiotic pins of feverish imaginations. Bad taste prevailed, and the time was wasted in reading of malicious books. Then there appeared this brilliant light to dispel the darkness of the intelligence. And as birds flee at the sight of the hunter, or at the whistling of an arrow, so vanished with the errors, the bad taste, and the absurd beliefs, sinking into the night of oblivion. And while it is true that the singer of Ilium, in his sonorous verses, was the first to open the temple of the Muses and to celebrate the heroism of mortals and the wisdom of immortals, while it is true that the Swan of Mantua exalted the piousness of him who rescued the gods from the conflagration of his native land and who renounced the delights of Venus to obey your will. You, Jupiter, greatest of all gods, and the most delicate sentiments sprung from his lyre, his melancholy music transporting the mind to other realms. It is also no less certain that neither Homer nor Virgil reformed the manners of their age, as did Cervantes. At his appearance, truth once more occupied her throne, announcing a new era to the world, and then corrupted. If you ask about his beauties, though I know them well, I propose that you ask Apollo, supreme judge on the matter, if the author of Quixote has borne insist in his immortal altars.
Receive, O my father, these arguments of mine with the same pleasure that you listen on still nights to the complaints of Philomene. The 9 sisters and I have read in the gardens of Parnassus this book of which the wise Minerva spoke. Its merry style and pleasant rhythm sounds in my ears, like a sonorous fountain, springing at the mouth of Umbrian cave. If even in the extreme poverty that breeds the hunger, misery, and woes that afflict the hapless, a humble son of mine has nevertheless been able to lift up to me his songs and to harmonize his accents, offering me a tribute more gorgeous and precious than my glittering chariot or my indomitable horses, if unstinking dungeon and happy prison of a soul that yearns to fly, his well-trained pen was able to pour forth torrents of dazzling poetry, far sweeter and richer than the waters of the golden Pactolus. Why, then, should we deny his superiority and not give him the victory as the greatest genius the universe have ever seen? His Quixote is the favorite book of the Muses, and while with its humor, it consoles the depressed and the melancholy and enlightens the ignorant. It is at the same time a history, the most faithful history of Spanish costumes. I am, therefore, of the same opinion as the wise Pallas, and may the gods who do not share that opinion forgive me.
If the greatest merit of Cervantes consists in having endured so many misfortunes, and since, in other respects, he surpasses no one, if indeed he is not surpassed, then I can also say that Homer, blind and miserable, once subsisted in public charity, which Cervantes never did, wandering through the towns and cities, with his lyre as his only friend and living in the most complete misery. This do you remember well, ungrateful Apollo.
So what? And Virgil? Has he not also been poor? Did he not live for a long time on a single loaf of bread, a gift of Caesar? The melancholy that breeds from his works does not tell enough of how much his sensitive and delicate heart must have suffered. Could he have suffered less than the brilliant Homer or the gay Cervantes?
All that is true, no doubt. But you must not forget that Cervantes was wounded, overpowered, and taken captive on the inhospitable soil of Africa, where he drained to the dregs the chalice of bitterness, living under the constant threat of death.
No! By my spear, no! Never! While a drop of immortal blood warms my veins, Cervantes shall not win. How can I permit a boat to rise victorious that hurt my glory to the ground and makes mock my place? Jupiter, I helped you one time, so listen to my reason.
Listen, O Jupiter the judge, the reasons of valiant Mars, as sensible as he is courageous. Light and truth spring from his words. How indeed can we permit this man whose glory time has respected, and let Saturn speak up, to see himself displaced in a one-armed upstart, the scorn of society?
And if ye, father of gods and men, doubt the force of my arguments, inquire of these others if there be any among them who will sustain his reasons with his arm.
Foolish Mars, who has forgotten the Trojan field where you were wounded by a mere mortal? If your reasons are backed by your sword, mine fear no combat with them on your ground. But, so I may not be called reckless, I wish to show you how wrong you are. Cervantes followed your banners and served you heroically on the waters of Lepanto, where he would have lost his life had destiny not meant him for greater end. If he abandoned the sword to take up the pen, it was by the will of the immortals and not to disparage you, as you may have imagined in your wild delirium. Do not then be ungrateful, you whose generous heart is inaccessible to rancor and odious passions. Cervantes ridiculed knight errantry because it was no longer proper to his time. Besides, those are not the combats that you honor, but battles in the open field, as you well know. These are my arguments, and if they don't convince you, I accept your challenge.
Having spoken Minerva, like a lightning-loaded cloud approaching another over the center of the ocean when the sky darkens, slowly marches forward, clasping their formidable shield and lowering her spear. A terrible angel of destruction, a tranquil but terrifying look, the sound of her voice striking fear. Bellona places herself beside Mars, ready to help him. On seeing this, Apollo drops his snare and seizes his bow, draws an arrow from his golden quiver, and placing himself beside Minerva, pulls his bow, ready to shot. Olympus, on the verge of collapse, shudders. The light of day darkens and the gods tremble.
Go back to your seats, Minerva, Apollo, and you, Mars and Bellona. Do not provoke celestial fury. I shall put an end to this dispute. Justice shall weight the books with strictly impartiality, and what she decrees shall be followed in the world, while you shall accept her immutable judgment.
Justice descends from her throne and goes to the center, bearing impartial scales, on which Mercury places Aeneid and the Quixote. After oscillating for a long time, the Neo family points to the middle, indicating that the books have equal weights. Venus is shocked but keeps silent. Mercury removes the Aeneid and replaces it with the Iliad. A smile appears on the lips of Juno, a smile that speedily vanishes when she sees the two scales bearing the Quixote and the Iliad rising and falling. Suspense grips everyone. No one speaks, no one breathes. A zephyr flies overhead and lands on a branch of a tree to await the verdict destiny. At last, the scales rest equal and remain still.
Gods and goddesses, justice believed in equal, bow your heads. Then, and let us give the trumpet to Homer, the lyre to Virgil, and the laurel crown to Cervantes, while fame shall publish into the world in the verdict of destiny, and Apollo shall intone a hymn to the new star that from now on shall shine in the sky of glory and occupy a seat in the temple of immortality.
Hail to the greatest son of man, favorite son of the Muses, core of the intense light that shall illuminate the universe. Hail, praise to your name, splendid luminary around whom, in the days to come, shall revolve 1,000 intellectuals, admirers of your glory. Hail, masterpiece of land of Almighty, pride of Spain, most beautiful of the flowers that crown my rose. I salute you, you shall eclipse the glories of antiquity. Your name, written in letters of gold in the temple of immortality, shall be the despair of other geniuses. Mighty giant, you shall be invincible, rising like a superb monument in the midst of your century. You shall draw all eyes to yourself. Your powerful arm shall vanquish your enemies as a hungry fire consumes dry straw. Go, inspired muses, gather fragrant mercy. beauteous laurel, and red roses and weave immortal crowns for Cervantes. Pan and Silenus and young fauns and merry satyrs dance on the carpet of the dark forest, while the Nereids, the Naiads, the noisy undines and the playful nymphs, in scattering 1,000 fragrant flowers, embellish with their song the solitude of the seas, the lakes, the waterfalls, and the rivers, and agitate the clear surface of the fountains in their diverse games.
The muses, nymphs, naiads, etc. began to dance, as well as Bacchus, Momus, Silenus, and Ganymede, Terpsichore being the lead dancer, Apollo and Erato playing the lyre, Euterpe the flute, Clio the trumpet, and Calliope the bugle. Meanwhile, the gods and goddesses arranged themselves on either side of the stage, which has been cleared of their thrones. Martial is played and a second curtain opens, revealing an illuminated bust of Cervantes being crowned by one of the mortals.